The evening sun was sliding behind the California coast as I drove home from the estate attorney's office, letting the crisp air blow through my open windows. Warm streaks of coral and gold stretched across the horizon. A rare kind of calm after months of emotional exhaustion. For the first time since spring, since my sister Caroline's passing, I felt something close to relief. Caroline had been meticulous about her affairs, though the process of settling everything had dragged on for months. Yet when I finally signed the last of the documents that afternoon, the outcome stunned me. My sister hadn't just left me a little nest egg. She'd handed me a new life. Her Seabrook Cove cottage overlooking the cliffs, renovated just last year, valued at nearly $2.50 million. A carefully managed investment portfolio worth even more. And a vintage jewelry collection she'd guarded like treasure. At 64, after decades working in child psychiatry and living on a modest pension, I suddenly found myself holding the type of financial security I had never imagined. I could already picture sharing the news with my daughter, Laura, who had been comforting, patient, almost overly attentive after Caroline's death. She'd insisted I move in with her, just for a while. After I sold my Arizona condo, her daughter Megan had welcomed me too, promising I'd feel right at home in their small house near the San Diego suburbs. I turned onto Laura Street, rehearsing the way I would tell her. Maybe I'd help her launch the online bakery she'd talked about for years, but never had the means to start. Maybe I'd help Megan with her postgraduate tuition. This inheritance didn't feel like wealth. It felt like opportunity. A door Caroline had opened for all three of us. The lights were mostly off when I pulled into the driveway. Strange. It wasn't late yet. Only the kitchen glowed faintly. I walked toward the side entrance, smiling to myself as I imagined the look on Laura's face when I told her the news. But before my hand touched the doorknob, voices drifted out through the open kitchen window. "She actually gets everything." That was Megan's voice, sharper than usual, tinged with something I couldn't identify at first. "Everything," Laura replied. "The lawyer called her this morning. It's more than $5 million in total." My heart lifted at first. They knew already. Maybe they were excited. Maybe they were planning something sweet. But then Laura spoke again. Her voice flat, almost mechanical in its coldness. Don't worry. I've been tracking her messages for weeks. I knew exactly when the appointment was scheduled." "Tracking?" My stomach tightened. "You installed it on her phone, right?" Megan asked. "Of course," Laura replied. "She thinks I was just updating her phone. I've been watching every call, every text. The world shifted under my feet." "What happens now?" Megan whispered. "We start tomorrow," Laura said calmly. "I already talked to the doctor. By the time the evaluation happens, she won't be able to argue anything. She'll look confused enough. Then I'll file the petition, and we'll have full control before Christmas." My fingers tightened around the doorknob. They weren't excited for me. They were planning to erase me. But what I heard next, whispered like a secret they had rehearsed, made my blood turn to ice and forced me to decide whether to walk inside or disappear before they noticed I was ever there. I had lived long enough to understand when a conversation was harmless and when it was dangerous. And whatever my daughter and granddaughter were discussing behind that kitchen window belonged to a darkness I never imagined would involve my own family. Once the medication is in her system for a few days, she won't even realize what's happening, Laura said. Dr. Harlow said it's common in aging patients. You're sure it won't hurt her? Megan whispered. Don't start with guilt now, Laura snapped quietly. She won't be hurt, just confused, long enough for the evaluation to show impairment. After that, the court does the rest. I leaned backward, slowly, silently, like a shadow trying not to breathe. They weren't concerned about me. They were concerned about the timeline, the paperwork, the money, Caroline's money. The thought hit me so hard, I nearly stumbled on the back step. My sister had trusted me more than anyone. She hadn't known that the people living under my roof, the two I believed loved me most, had already chosen greed over blood. My hands trembled as I made my way to the car. I drove without direction, tears blurring the road. Until the glowing sign of a late-night diner pulled me from my daze. Inside, sitting in a booth beneath buzzing fluorescent lights, I forced myself to breathe. For decades, I had counseled families through crises, manipulation, hostility, fractured bonds. But somehow I had failed to see the cracks in my own. My phone lay on the table in front of me, like a viper waiting to strike. Had she really installed something on it? Did she truly watch my every message? Every keystroke? It sounded absurd. It also sounded exactly like what I'd heard. My fingers shook as I picked up the phone, but I didn't use it. If Laura had access, calling anyone would alert her immediately. I needed another device, another number. I stepped outside, walked to the gas station next door, and bought a cheap prepaid phone with cash. When it activated, a strange sense of safety swept over me. Only then did I call the one person who might understand the technical side of all this. My nephew, Oliver. Caroline's son. When he answered, sleep, in his voice, I whispered, Ollie, something's wrong. Please listen without interrupting. And I told him everything. The inheritance, the phone monitoring, the plan to disorient me with medication. Every word I had overheard. Silence stretched for nearly 10 seconds. Aunt Mara, he said finally, using the nickname only he and Caroline had used. I believe you, and I'm going to help you prove every bit of it. But whatever you do, don't touch your real phone. Keep it exactly as is. Why? Because if she's monitoring it, she'll see changes. And we need her to think nothing's wrong. A bitter laugh escaped me. Nothing is wrong. Only my daughter is planning to erase my independence. But Oliver was steady. We're going to get evidence. Real evidence. You're not alone, I promise. For the first time since hearing their voices through the window, I felt something like strength returning. We spent nearly an hour going over steps, securing a laptop, creating backups, gathering proof quietly. I followed every instruction with a precision I hadn't used in years. But when the diner began closing for the night, I headed for a cheap motel down the road, checking in with cash avoiding lights, avoiding questions. I lay in the stiff bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how many times my daughter smiled at me that week while planning my downfall. But as I drifted into a restless sleep, one terrifying thought grew louder than all the others. Tomorrow, they were going to start, unless I stopped them first. I carried the steaming mug to the guest room with the same gentle steps I used to take when Megan was a baby asleep in my arms. Calm, soft, controlled. But inside, every nerve was pulled tight like a violin string about to snap. The moment the door closed behind me, I locked it, set the mug on the dresser, and breathed deeply. My hands trembled only once, when I unscrewed the small plastic bottle I'd hidden in my sweater sleeve. I poured a good portion of the tea into it, sealed it, and tucked it into my handbag. Then I tested the rest with one of the strips Oliver had told me to buy. It turned dark within seconds. The sight hollowed something inside me. Even after everything I overheard, some part of me hoped, prayed, that I had misunderstood. But there it was. Proof. Bright and merciless. A sedative. A strong one. My legs weakened beneath me as I sank onto the edge of the bed. Tears came quietly. Not the loud, shaking sobs of heartbreak, but the silent collapse that comes when you realize the people who should protect you are willing to watch you unravel. I wiped my face, steadied my breath, and placed the hidden recording device under the nightstand, angled toward the door. Next came the tiny camera I bought, tucked strategically inside a decorative candle holder I knew Laura never touched. Then I turned off the main light, leaving on only a soft lamp, and practiced the part I needed to play. Delayed responses, gentle confusion, misplaced words. Old training kicked in. I knew precisely how cognitive fog looked, and how it didn't. When I finally stepped out for dinner, the stage was set. Dinner, surprisingly, was delicious. Lemon pasta with spinach. Megan kept refilling my water glass with a sort of forced cheerfulness, while Laura watched me like a scientist observing a lab rat. I pretended to yawn, feigned slight dizziness, and asked, "Is it Thursday today?" letting my brows knit together in uncertainty. Laura's eyes lit almost imperceptibly. "It's Monday, Mom." "Oh," I murmured, tapping my forehead. Goodness, I don't know why I thought that. Inside, my jaw clenched. They wanted me to behave like this. They wanted the cracks. I would give them the cracks, just not the fracture. By the next morning, I perfected the role. I left cabinets open, asked where my glasses were while wearing them, called Megan by Laura's name once. All small missteps, believable ones, never exaggerated. But the real evidence came from watching them. Laura whispered with someone on the phone twice, her voice hushed and clipped. Megan searched my bathroom when she thought I was napping. At lunch, Laura tried again. Herbal drops in my soup this time. I didn't consume a drop. Every attempt went into a labeled bag in my purse, tucked away like tiny pieces of ammunition. That afternoon, Laura announced, "Mom, I scheduled you an appointment with a specialist, just to make sure everything's okay." "A specialist?" I asked, playing innocent. "Already?" It's just routine, she insisted sweetly. Dr. Hale is excellent with cognitive evaluations. I knew the name. I had testified against one of his reports years ago. Perfect. The appointment came 2 days later. I dressed purposefully, neutral clothing, hair brushed neatly, makeup minimal. Not disheveled. Not helpless. Just older, slower, a bit forgetful. Dr. Hale greeted me with overly polished charm. He asked questions designed to trip me up, his tone dripping with false concern. What year is it, Mrs. Rowan? 2000. I hesitated, then offered the wrong year intentionally. And who's the current governor? Another pause. Another slight mistake. He scribbled notes eagerly. But what he didn't realize was that I recognized every tactic he used. I used them back. By the end of the exam, he looked satisfied. Too satisfied. Laura practically glowed. They both believed they'd succeeded. They had no idea they were walking straight into a trap. Because what Laura didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I had already contacted a lawyer who would make the courtroom a battlefield. They could never win. I watched Laura lower her gaze, feigning guilt. Megan dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Their performance was flawless. Then it was our turn. Ms. Rivera stood. Your Honor, before addressing the petition, I request permission to play a brief recording. The judge nodded. My heart pounded as the audio began. Laura's calculating voice, recorded in the kitchen, the night I first overheard them. I've been monitoring her phone for months. Once she's disoriented enough, Dr. Hale will confirm everything. Megan's voice followed. And we can sell the cottage by spring? Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Laura's attorney stiffened. Megan's face drained of color. Miss Rivera continued. We also have video footage showing medication being added to Mrs. Rowan's drinks without consent. Drug tests confirming sedatives, screenshots of unauthorized phone surveillance, and financial documents showing attempted transfers from Mrs. Rowan's accounts. She clicked a remote, and images displayed, one by one. Each one a betrayal. Laura's lips trembled. Megan covered her mouth. Their attorney looked horrified. When the evidence ended, the room felt silent and heavy. The judge breathed in slowly. Mrs. Rowan, would you like to address the court? I stood, hands steadier than they had been in weeks. Yes, Your Honor. I looked at Laura. Truly looked at her. For the first time since all this began, her eyes were wet, not with remorse, but with fear that the life she'd planned was crumbling before her. I am not confused, I said softly, but I am heartbroken. My own family tried to convince the world I was incapable so they could gain access to money that was never promised to them. There is no decline, only betrayal. Only betrayal. The judge nodded solemnly. The petition for conservatorship is dismissed, and this case will be referred for criminal investigation. Laura's shoulders collapsed. Megan began to cry. And we shouldn't so and orange. Their attorney whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't know before stepping back. I lowered myself into my seat, feeling both shattered and saved. Epilogue Pantal Plan I returned to Caroline's cottage within a week. Its windows warm with sunset, its rooms quiet with peace. But the final knock on my door came months later, reshaping everything again. It was Megan, standing alone, holding something in her hands, with eyes full of a truth I wasn't sure I was ready to hear. The sea air was cool that afternoon, drifting through the open windows of Caroline's cottage as I finished rearranging her old book collection. It had been months since the hearing, months of quiet, healing, and rediscovering the parts of myself I had almost forgotten. I heard the knock a second time before I reached the door. When I opened it, Megan stood on the front steps, wrapped in a light gray sweater, her eyes swollen, as though she'd been crying for hours. In her hands was a small brown envelope, worn at the edges from anxious fingers. "Grandma," she whispered. I hadn't heard her call me that since the day they were led out of court. For a long moment, neither of us moved. I simply looked at her, not with anger, not with forgiveness, but with a quiet sadness I didn't know how to hide. "May I come in?" she asked gently. I stepped aside, letting her into the cottage. She looked around at the soft colors, the ocean view through the living room window, the calmness that filled the space. "It's beautiful here," she murmured. I can see why Aunt Caroline loved it." I nodded. "She found peace here. I'm trying to do the same." Megan swallowed hard and held out the envelope. "I've been carrying this for weeks," she said. I wasn't sure if I should bring it, but Mom said... She paused, correcting herself. She said you deserve the truth, even if it's late. Truth. Thought. Word felt heavy. When I didn't take the envelope, she placed it gently on the coffee table. "I know nothing I say can undo what I did," she said, her voice trembling. "And I'm not here to make excuses. I need you to understand something." I waited. "I didn't start this," she whispered. "I didn't stop it either, and that's just as bad. I knew Mom was desperate about the house and the debt. I knew she was scared, but I followed her because I was scared too. I thought if she lost everything, we all would." She wiped her eyes. "I didn't see that we were about to lose you." Her voice cracked then, soft and raw. "And losing you was worse." I closed my eyes for a moment, absorbing her words. They didn't erase what had happened, but they carried a weight I couldn't ignore. Genuine remorse. "What's in the envelope?" I asked quietly. "Letters," she said. "Ones I wrote after the hearing. I tried mailing them, but never had the courage. Their apologies, explanations, things I didn't know how to say out loud. I touched the edge of the envelope with my fingertips, but didn't open it yet." "Megan," I said slowly, "you chose a path that hurt me deeply, and yourself, and your future. But you're young, and you still have the chance to rebuild the kind of life you want." Tears streamed down her face. "Do you Hate me? The question sliced through me. No, I said honestly. I don't hate you. I never could. She leaned forward suddenly, as if to hug me, then hesitated. Can I? She whispered. After a long pause, I opened my arms. Her embrace was fragile, almost childlike, full of regret and longing. For the first time in a year, my heart allowed itself to soften. Not forgive completely, not forget, but loosen enough to breathe again. When she stepped back, she wiped her cheeks and gave a trembling smile. I'm starting therapy, she said. Real therapy. Not the kind Mom and I pretended to understand. I want to be better than who I became. That's a good start, I said. She nodded, then moved toward the door. I won't come back unless you invite me, she whispered. But I hope someday you might want me to. I didn't answer. Not yet. Healing takes time. Understanding takes longer. But as she walked down the stone path toward the road, I felt something shift inside me. Not a return of trust, but the first quiet hint of possibility. I looked at the unopened envelope on the table. Maybe tomorrow I would read it. Maybe. Because healing doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes it arrives slowly, like waves against the cliff, washing away what hurts, one tide at a time.